Hello, this is Dr. Joe Trout from the physics program at Stockton University. And in this lecture, we'll have an introduction to race, racism, and critical race theory, and understanding their concepts and impacts. This is an R2 class. This course meets the R2 designation for the University Procedure 2050, which states that at the beginning of fall 2021, all matriculated students must complete 2 courses in race and racism education. The graduation requirement further states that R2 courses focus on disciplinary or interdisciplinary content while studying the way that race and racism have impacted a particular field of study. In R2 courses, at least 25% of the course time will be devoted to the study of race and racism, and this will include readings, homeworks, assignments, and research projects. So today is this lecture is the first lecture in this series, and we're going to talk about definitions, and then we'll talk about in later lectures about historical content, racism, critical race theory, applications, and make some conclusions. Critical race theory is a theoretical, academic, and intellectual framework that examines the ways in which race and racism intersect with politics, culture, and the law. There's a couple of definitions for race. This one comes from the Cambridge Dictionary. This is one of the main groups to which people are often considered to belong based on physical characteristics that are perceived to share, such as skin color, eye shape, etc. Or the idea that people can be divided into different groups based on physical characteristics that they are perceived to share, such as skin color, eye shape, or dividing people in this way. Or a group of people who share the same language, history, characteristics, etc. Race is a social construct that categorizes people based on physical characteristics such as skin color, facial features, and hair texture. If we look at some of the historical content, we have critical race theory suggests that the concept of race has been used historically to justify inequalities and hierarchies, particularly in colonial contexts. Modern understanding is that some people feel that modern science has shown that race has no biological basis, and it is socially and politically a constructed concept. It's important that because some feel that the understanding race is crucial for addressing issues of racism and inequality. Another term you'll hear is ethnicity, which refers to a shared cultural practice, perspectives, and distinctions that are set apart from one group of people from another. It includes elements such as language, religion, traditions, and cultural heritage. So this comes from the Google Dictionary. An ethnic group, a social group that share common and distinctive culture, religion, language, or the like. And we have ethnic traits, backgrounds, allegiances, or associations. An ethnic group is a community or a population made of people who share a common cultural background or descent. Here are some key characteristics. We have cultural identity, and members of an ethnic group often identify with their group through a common cultural traits. There's common ancestry, and ethnic groups often share a common ancestry or historical experience. Geographical region, so ethnicity can be linked to a specific region or country. The difference from race is that unlike race, which is based on physical characteristics, ethnicity is based on cultural factors. an individual can identify with multiple ethnicities. The important is that it plays a significant role in forming individual and group identities. And understanding this helps to in appreciating cultural diversity and fostering social cohesion. So what is racism? Racism is a belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities that justify discrimination or prejudice against people based on their race. It often manifests in a form of discriminatory practices, policies, and behaviors that maintain racial inequalities. There's a couple of types of racism. There's individual racism. So this personal beliefs and actions that support racial superiority and discrimination. There's institutional racism. These are policies and practices within an organization and an institution that systematically disadvantage certain racial groups. There's also systematic racism, and this is a complex interaction of policies, practices, and cultural norms that perpetuate racial inequality and disadvantage. Here's some more key concepts and some more definitions. First, we have prejudice. This is a preconceived opinion or bias against a race without sufficient knowledge or reason. Discrimination is actions or behaviors that result in unfair treatment of individuals based on their race. And stereotyping is an generalized belief about a particular group of people based on their race. The impact is that racism negatively affects individuals' physical, mental health, opportunities, and overall quality of life. It perpetuates social, economic, and political inequalities. So here's the definition of prejudice as it comes from Merriam-Webster's dictionary. It's an injury or damage resulting from some judgment or action of another and disregards of one's rights, especially to one's legal rights or claims. So it's a preconceived judgment or opinion, or an adverse opinion or leaning formed without just grounds or before sufficient knowledge. And in an instance of such judgment or opinion, and an irrational attitude of hostility directed against an individual, a race, a group, or their supposed characteristics. We also have discrimination, and this is a prejudiced or prejudicial outlook, action, or treatment based on racial discrimination. And the act or practice or racial discrimination is the act or practice of an instance of discriminating categorically rather than individually. So what's the difference between prejudice and discrimination? Well, discrimination and prejudice are related concepts, but they have different meanings. Prejudice refers to preconceived opinions or attitudes held by individuals or groups about others based on stereotypes, generalizations, or unfounded beliefs. Prejudice can be positive or negative and often involves making judgments about people without sufficient knowledge or experience. Discrimination occurs when these prejudices lead to an unfair treatment or action against individuals or groups. Discrimination involves behaviors or practices that disadvantage or harm people based on factors such as race, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation, disability, or other characteristics. In summary, prejudice is based on attitudes or beliefs, while discrimination involves acting on those prejudices by treating certain individuals or groups unfairly. Discrimination is the behavioral manifestation of prejudice. Prejudice involves forming a preconceived opinion about a person or group without adequate knowledge, thought, or reason. Here are 4 examples of prejudice. There's racial prejudice. This occurs when individuals are judged or discriminated against based on their race or ethnicity. For example, assuming that a person of a certain race is more likely to commit a crime or is less intelligent than without any factual basis. There's also gender prejudice. This involves stereotypes or discriminatory attitudes towards individuals based on their gender. For example, believing that women are less capable than men in leadership roles, or that men cannot be nurturing caregivers. There's also age prejudice, also known as ageism. This type of prejudice involves assumptions about individuals based on their age. For instance, considering older adults to be out of touch with technology or assuming that young people are irresponsible or lazy. There's also religious prejudice. This occurs when individuals are discriminated against or judged because of their religious beliefs or practices. For example, assuming that someone who wears a hijab is oppressed, or believing that all followers of a particular religion are extremists. Here's 4 examples of prejudice. So, workplace discrimination against women. So a qualified woman is passed over for promotion in favor of a less qualified man because the employer believes that men are naturally better leaders and decision makers. Racial profiling by law enforcers. So an African-American man is stopped and searched by the police more frequently than his white counterparts because of the stereotype that associates his race with criminal behavior. Age discrimination in hiring. So a highly experienced, capable 55-year-old job applicant is not considered for a position because the hiring manager assumes that older workers are not adaptable or technology proficient. We also have religious prejudice in social settings. So a Muslim family is not invited to a community event or gatherings because neighbors wrongly associate their faith with terrorism and fear that they may be dangerous or untrustworthy. Discrimination occurs when individuals or groups are treated unfairly or equally based on certain characteristics. Here's 4 types of discrimination. There's racial discrimination. This involves treating individuals differently or unfairly based on their race or ethnicity. There's gender discrimination. This type of discrimination occurs when individuals are treated unfairly based on their gender. Age discrimination, also known as ageism. This involves treating people unfairly because of their age. And disability discrimination. This occurs when an individual is treated unfairly due to a physical or mental disability. Discrimination involves treating someone unfairly or unjustly based on certain characteristics, such as race, gender, age, or religion. So here's 4 examples of discrimination. Employment discrimination based on race. So an African-American candidate with the same qualifications as a white candidate is consistently not hired for a job because the employer feels to hire people of a certain race. Employer prefers to hire people of a certain race. Gender pay gap. A woman and man in the same job title, responsibilities, and experience receive different salaries, with the woman being paid less solely because of her gender. And age discrimination in housing. an elderly person is denied an apartment rental because the landlord believes that older tenants are more likely to have health issues and unable to keep up with the maintenance. For discrimination based on disability, a person using a wheelchair is unable to access a public building or transportation system because there are no accommodations such as ramps or elevators, making it difficult or impossible for them to use these services. So that's been a quick introduction with the definitions for race and racism.